You open a textbook. It starts with Egypt, or Mesopotamia, or the first clay tablet someone bothered to date, as if nothing happened before that, as if your species arrived fully formed, ready to build pyramids and write laws. But the real answer is far stranger. History is only about 5,000 years old. Your species is not. Before the first word was ever written, humans had already been walking this earth for hundreds of thousands of years, hunting, grieving, falling in love, raising children by firelight with no name for the century they were living in, because centuries hadn't been invented yet. That silence, that enormous stretch of unrecorded time, is not empty. It is where almost everything about you was built. So what actually happened before history began? Start with a single skeleton in 1974, in a dry riverbed in Ethiopia. A young researcher named Donald Johanson found a partial skeleton of a small, upright hominin. Her bones showed a hip and knee built for walking on two legs, long before human brains had grown large. The team nicknamed her Lucy, after a song playing on repeat at their camp that night. Lucy was roughly 3.5 million years old. She could not speak. She could not make tools the way you'd recognize, but she could walk, fully upright, through open grassland, scanning the horizon, the same way you glance down a street before crossing it. That single shift, standing up, changed everything that came after. Walking freed the hands. Free hands eventually picked up stones and started shaping them. Shaped stones became spears. Spears became better hunting became more calories, and more calories, over unthinkable stretches of time, became a bigger brain. You are, in a very literal sense, the end product of a body that decided to stand up and never sat back down. But standing up didn't make anyone modern. It just opened the door. For millions of years after Lucy, several different kinds of humans lived on this planet at the same time. Not one species evolving in a straight line toward you, like a chart in a textbook. A messy, overlapping family tree full of cousins. Homo erectus walked out of Africa long before your direct ancestors did, spreading across Asia and surviving there for well over 1 million years. Homo naledi, discovered only in 2013 in a South African cave system, had a brain the size of an orange, yet may have deliberately placed its dead in that cave. And Neanderthals lived across Europe and Asia for over 300,000 years, controlling fire, burying their dead, and caring for injured members of their group, well enough for badly broken bones to heal. For a while, your ancestors and the Neanderthals were neighbors. Here is where the story gets stranger than most people expect. In 2010, a geneticist named Svante Pääbo led the team that sequenced the Neanderthal genome from fragments of ancient bone. What they found rewired an entire field. Most people alive today, outside sub-Saharan Africa, carry a small percentage of Neanderthal DNA. Not as a metaphor, as actual inherited code, sitting in your genome right now, shaping things like your immune response, and even how you sleep. Pääbo would later win the Nobel Prize for this work. The conclusion was almost impossible to sit with at first. Humans didn't simply replace Neanderthals. In some places, humans and Neanderthals had children. You are, quite literally, a hybrid of more than one kind of human. That fact alone should change how you picture prehistory. It wasn't one triumphant species marching forward while lesser ones fell away. It was several kinds of human overlapping, competing, occasionally loving each other, for tens of thousands of years before only one lineage remained widespread across the planet. So where did that one lineage actually come from? In 1987, two researchers named Rebecca Cann and Alan Wilson traced human mitochondrial DNA, the genetic material passed down only through mothers, back through generation after generation. Every line converged. Not at a village, not at a continent full of separate origins, but at a single population of women living in Africa roughly 200,000 years ago. The press nicknamed her Mitochondrial Eve, though she wasn't the only woman alive then, just the one whose maternal line never broke. Every person on this planet, whatever they look like, wherever their family is from, can trace a genetic thread back to that same region, that same rough window of time. Sit with that for a second. Before farming, before villages, before anyone had a reason to write anything down, there was just this small, uncertain population of humans in Africa, surviving droughts, surviving each other, surviving predators that no longer exist. Genetic evidence suggests the population may have dropped dangerously low at points, squeezed by climate shifts that nearly ended the whole experiment. Everyone alive today descends from people who made it through that bottleneck. Every single person you have ever met is distantly family. Somewhere in that overlapping window of different human species, another quiet revolution was happening, one that rarely gets its own chapter but arguably deserves one fire. Controlled fire didn't just mean warmth or protection from predators at night. Though it meant both of those things. It meant cooked food. Cooking breaks down tough plant fibers and proteins before they ever reach your stomach, which means your body spends far less energy digesting and has far more energy left over for everything else. Some researchers argue that shift, freeing up calories once spent on digestion, is part of what allowed the human brain to grow as large and as expensive as it eventually became. A brain that size burns an enormous share of your daily energy, even now, just sitting quietly inside your skull. You can trace a straight line from a hominin crouched by a controlled flame to the fact that you are capable of reading this sentence and understanding it. Fire also did something less obvious. It extended the day. For the first time, waking hours weren't dictated entirely by sunlight, and around a fire, in the dark, with nothing else demanding attention, something new had room to happen, talking that wasn't strictly about survival. Some anthropologists believe firelight gatherings were where storytelling itself first took root, long before anyone could write a single word down, the circle of light pushing back the dark, and inside that circle, voices filling the silence with something other than warnings about predators. Around the same broad era, your ancestors also did something almost unthinkable for a species, with no ships, no maps, and no idea what lay beyond the horizon. They left Africa. Not once, but in multiple waves, over tens of thousands of years, some earlier attempts fading out and leaving little trace, until a lineage finally succeeded in spreading and surviving nearly everywhere. They crossed into the Arabian Peninsula. They followed coastlines into South Asia. They eventually reached Australia by boat, deliberately, at a time when boats were about as basic as technology gets, tens of thousands of years before anyone would think to write the word ocean. They pushed north into freezing land bridges and eventually crossed into a continent with no humans in it at all. A place you now call the Americas. Every single migration happened without a map, without any guarantee of what was on the other side, and without the promise of ever coming back populations that left one region often lost contact with the population behind them for thousands of years. The diversity of humanity you see today, every language, every skin tone adapted to different sun exposure, every regional custom, all traces back to variations built on top of that one small African population that happened to survive the bottleneck. Then something shifted. And it wasn't technology first. It was thinking. Around 70,000 years ago, archaeological sites start showing something new. Burial sites with objects placed beside the dead, as if the living believed something continued after death. None of that keeps you fed. None of that keeps you warm. It's the earliest clear evidence of humans doing something no other species had done in quite the same way. Spirits. Ancestors. Meaning that didn't need to be touched to be real. That capacity to imagine something invisible and get an entire group to believe in it together is arguably the real starting gun for everything that followed. Not fire, not stone tools, belief in shared fiction. It's how strangers who had never met each other could suddenly cooperate under the same idea, the same god, the same tribal name, the same invisible rulebook nobody could physically point to. Small bands became larger groups. Larger groups became the first semi-permanent camps. And eventually, tens of thousands of years later, someone in one of those settlements pressed a reed into wet clay and made the first mark that counted as writing. History officially began. But notice what that timeline actually means. Writing didn't create human nature. It just started recording a creature that had already been fully formed, emotionally and socially, for close to 100,000 years before anyone thought to write anything down. The pharaohs, the philosophers, the empires you learned about in school, all of that sits on top of a much older foundation that was finished long before any of it started. This is the part that should sit uncomfortably with you. Everything that feels ancient to you. Cities, kings, wars fought over land and borders, is actually the most recent chapter of the story. The genuinely old material, walking upright, forming pair bonds, grieving the dead, fearing the dark, trusting a small circle of people, while distrusting strangers outside it, was already locked in place long before anyone kept a calendar. Your instincts are not products of the modern world. They're inherited from a world with no roads, no property lines, no clocks, and no written laws at all. Think about how strange that makes ordinary moments in your own life. Why does a crowded room of strangers feel faintly uneasy, even when nobody has done anything wrong? Because for most of your species' existence, a stranger really could mean danger, and the part of your brain that decides who to trust was shaped in that world. Not this one. Why does a small circle of close friends feel more valuable than 1,000 acquaintances online? Because your ancestors survived in bands of maybe 50 to 150 people, and your brain was never upgraded for the scale of a modern city. Why do you still flinch at rustling in the dark, even in a place you know is safe? Because for hundreds of thousands of years, that sound sometimes meant something with teeth. None of that is a flaw in you. It's a fossil, still running, still operating inside a body built for an entirely different world. So the next time you feel a pull toward a group that shares your beliefs, or a strange comfort sitting near an open fire, or a flicker of fear walking alone at night, you're not imagining some outdated cultural habit. You're running software that predates cities by hundreds of thousands of years. Your body still thinks it might be on that savanna. It doesn't know history started 5,000 years ago. Because almost everything that built it happened long before that clock ever started ticking. You open a textbook, and it starts with Egypt, but you didn't.